any advice that you've been given to your students in regards to standardized testing?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll just say is I agree with you wholeheartedly that when you see things like optional or recommended on an application and it's a selective school, you should be doing those optional. I have my air quotes going on that because it is a competitive process and somebody else is adding that to their file. And maybe the admissions office is signaling that it's not the first thing that they're going to look at. But all of these schools do what's called holistic admissions, meaning they're looking at several factors to determine if you're a good fit for their institution. And if you're trying to get into a hard, difficult school to get into, why wouldn't you be doing everything possible? Your competition is, and this matters to you. You should invest all the time that you can to do that. So testing is let's remember these policies are called test optional. So just as a matter of course, a family should be thinking about continuing to investigate what can be done to take the test, first of all. And then I think just as importantly, what can I do to be as good as I can on these? Now, why is this still so important? Unless a school or admissions office, I should say, has gone to test blind, they are not really putting their money where their mouth is in terms of saying that they no longer care about testing. So the UCs have moved that way. Interestingly, I'll use Cornell as an example, not just because I work there, but Cornell has 7 undergraduate admissions offices. 3 of them have gone test blind. 4 of them are test optional. And I can assure you that test scores that come in will be evaluated. You made a really, I think, good point about the trend here accelerated, moving towards test optional. Means, okay, testing is no longer required, but it's optional. This happened because of the pandemic. Students were not able to take tests as frequently or at all in the last 18 months because of health considerations or whatever. And so these colleges weren't going to be able to get applicants if they didn't start reevaluating these policies. That's a very different reason to make this change in policy than the philosophical ones that schools had started to consider years before about whether they really just wanted to value testing for all its advantages that you mentioned. Some schools just philosophically decided we don't need this. But when you're doing it for a pragmatic reason, which is people aren't taking the test, that doesn't mean that you're philosophically really willing to let go of it. So yes, schools in the Ivy League and selective schools that have gone test optional, they will be admitting students who don't submit test scores. I worked with a few last year. It will happen. But students that submit great test scores are absolutely helping themselves. And while they have not released the data, I would speculate pretty educatedly that they're getting it at a higher rate if you've got a great test score. Because again, this was not a decision that these schools went to fully prepared to investigate as an admissions office, fully prepared to let go of philosophically. And so if a student can come in with a very strong test score for that institution, that's going to help confirm all the things that they're doing with all of their applicants in terms of a holistic read, the rigor of the curriculum and the evaluation of the transcript, close look at the essays and what the student brings to the table as a person, the extracurricular activities that add to what they're going to bring to campus. They may like all of these things. And then if they see this test score that is really, really good and is similar to what they've admitted in the past, that's a huge edge for a student until they go to test blind. That is just a reality. And even if folks don't like anything about testing, that's just the reality. That's not a judgment on the testing. That's just, why would you not want to look into it? And the nice thing these days is if you look into tutoring and you take the tests a few times and you don't do well, it's not the end of the world. Then you don't submit them. That's a nice thing. Now you have the options, a little bit less pressure for students. And I think that is great, but you have the option to choose to add it. And again, they'll look at it without it, but you're neglecting an important piece of the puzzle if you consider it optional to mean, oh, I just won't do that. They don't need that anymore. Yeah, I think they'd like to see it.